Is she running late again? As the start time loomed, I mused while gazing at the empty chair. My coworkers also looked frustrated. Eventually, the owner of that seat showed up about an hour after we had opened for business. My name is Casey. I'm a 48-year-old office worker. I live with my husband Scott and our 2 kids. My kids are in high school and middle school, so they're pretty independent now, allowing me to focus on my job. Scott recently started a business with some friends, and while it seems tough, he's happier than before. I've been working in accounting for quite some time at this small to mid-sized company and get along well with the part-time staff. However, I'm having issues with a newer employee named Frances. She's 24, half my age. The daughter of our managing director, she's clearly a product of nepotism. I didn't mind that initially. It's a small company, and these things happen. So when I heard that the managing director's daughter was joining the company, I just thought, oh, that's it. But Frances is a real piece of work. She was assigned to accounting after one of our part-timers left due to personal reasons. I was mostly handling things on my own, and I had heard Frances had some qualifications. So I thought maybe she would lighten my load. Turns out, I was wrong. I'm better off working alone. From our very first meeting, things felt off. When I greeted her, she said, "Sure, nice to meet you, Aunt." I was flabbergasted. Not only was her attention divided, but she also had the audacity to call me Aunt upon our first meeting. The managing director just watched it unfold with a smile, not seeming to mind. If my kids behaved like that, I'd tell them, "Don't be rude." Are things just different nowadays? I've never really liked our managing director personally. We only converse when necessary. I never knew he was so indulgent with his daughter. He probably thinks she can do no wrong. Confronting Frances would only upset him, so I held my tongue. Though I sighed inwardly, I have a duty to train her, so I went on to explain her the tasks. But Frances wouldn't listen. "I can't remember all these things at once," she said, giving up, even on listening. I restrained my irritation and asked her about her so-called qualifications. "I thought you had some kind of certification. What is it?" I thought maybe I could assign her work based on that, but her answer was, "I'm an accounting clerk." Apparently, she went to a vocational high school and got the certification almost involuntarily. She tried and failed multiple times to become an accounting technician, she told me. Is it really okay to have someone like that in accounting? I had my reservations, but I did my best to train her while focusing on my own work. A month after Frances joined, her attitude hadn't changed, and she still couldn't do her job properly. To be precise, I had taught her the same things repeatedly, but it seemed like she had no intention of remembering, as she didn't even take notes. Other staff members were also complaining that Frances wouldn't do the work they asked of her. What made it even more frustrating was that she was earning the same salary as me, despite my many years of service. Another month passed, and Frances had shown little to no improvement. One day, she didn't show up at the start time. I called her mobile, but it went unanswered. The managing director was out meeting clients and hadn't arrived at the office yet, so everyone was worried. An hour later, Frances finally showed up, acting as if nothing had happened. "What happened? Is everything okay?" I asked.
"Oh, looks like I overslept."
"What kind of professional does that?" I told her. "If you're going to be late, you should at least inform the office." Frances gave a nonchalant,
"Okay,"
in response. Everyone around us sighed in unison. From then on, Frances started being late more frequently. Though she supposedly lived with her family, she spent many nights out, something even the managing director was unaware of. There were times when she would be late even when the managing director was in, but all he would say was, "Oh, you're late today," leaving everyone else dumbfounded. The stress from dealing with Frances kept piling up in various ways, and then the incident happened. Is she late again? Even the managing director didn't know. She had spent another night out. Apparently, she stayed at her lover's place. The start time came and went, and she was nowhere to be found. I called her mobile again, but as expected, no answer.
At this point, should we just ignore her?
My colleague Dina said, clearly frustrated. Finally, Frances arrived, more than an hour late. She sat down at her desk without a greeting and started putting on makeup as if nothing had happened. Everyone was stunned, but she didn't seem to care. I finally had to say something. "Frances, this really isn't okay." She looked at me puzzled. They don't seem to know what's wrong. You come in late, no greeting, and you start doing your makeup? Just then, I saw the managing director returning to his desk, but I continued. "I've told you before to call if you're going to be late, remember?" It felt ridiculous having to say this to a 24-year-old adult. It was like scolding a child. Frances just sulked, acting, indeed, like a child. The last thing I said was, "Isn't it common courtesy to apologize when you're late?" The managing director stormed over to me, his face twisted in anger. He yelled at me. "You insolent brat! Who do you think you are? You're fired!" I almost blurted out, "What?" but held my tongue. Nervous glances spread through the room. Of course, the president is conveniently absent. Well, the president's not really reliable to begin with. Frustrated with the managing director's tirade, my colleague Dina spoke up. "Wait a minute. Casey hasn't said anything wrong here." Dina works in sales and hates injustices. She has a strong sense of right and wrong. We've been good friends for a long time, and we help each other out at work. Everyone else in the room nodded at Dina's words, but not the managing director. He yelled at Dina. "You're talking back to me? You're fired too!" I couldn't take it anymore and glared at the managing director. "Are you serious about this?" Dina was glaring at him too. He declared both of us fired and told us to leave immediately. At that moment, the president returned, but did nothing but look puzzled. Apparently, the president and the managing director are relatives, and for some reason, the president can't oppose him. Fed up, Dina and I packed up and left. We stopped by a cafe on the way to catch our breath. "What's his problem? I was getting tired of the job, but I didn't think I'd have to quit like this," Dina said, still fuming. Indeed, we had started to think about quitting the company ever since Frances arrived. "I feel bad that you got fired because of me." That was my biggest concern. Had I not spoken out, Dina wouldn't have been fired. Dina reassured me. "It's okay. I was tired of working full-time anyway. Maybe this is a chance to find a part-time job. What about you, Casey?" "I've actually been offered a part-time accounting position at Scott's company." Dina thought that sounded like a better option. Both the managing director and Frances really ticked me off. Dina was still angry, and I agreed with her. I wonder if the company will be all right without us. Not that it's any of our business. I said that, and Dina finally smiled. "Exactly. Even if they beg us to come back, I won't. I feel like suing them for wrongful termination." We decided to take some time to cool off and discuss what to do next. When I got home and told Scott about what happened, He was even angrier than I was. "What? What's up with that managing director?" I was furious too, and unsure about whether I'd made the right decision. But Scott's reaction confirmed that I wasn't in the wrong. Scott's words were comforting, and I finally felt at ease. I then started working in accounting at Scott's company. The part-time accountants who were already there told me they felt more at ease now, as their workload had lightened. Dina too started working for Scott's company, though not full-time like before, but part-time. Since we were fired on the spot and had to pack up immediately, we hadn't been able to do the paperwork for leaving the company. Someone, probably my successor Francis, would take care of it. We started working energetically in our new environment. After some time had passed, I received a call from the managing director of my previous company. "We don't understand the accounting you were handling. Come to the office immediately." What's he talking about? Could it be they're failing at the monthly payments to clients and sales calculations that I used to handle? Besides, we haven't even received our exit paperwork yet, but we were fired just for being late. Who do they think they're talking to? Needless to say, I declined. No can do. But the managing director was relentless. "Come right now and we'll rehire you. You haven't found another job yet, have you?" I sighed. "No thanks. I've already switched jobs. I've taught Frances everything about accounting. Not sure if she gets it though." I hung up after saying that. Apparently, Dina also got contacted. There were several clients who said they'd stop doing business if Dina wasn't handling their accounts. The managing director arrogantly offered her re-employment as well. He had underestimated Dina, thinking she was just a female salesperson and wasn't capable of handling work. It turned out she was a valuable employee. This fueled our anger towards the managing director once again. Meanwhile, my phone kept ringing, with calls from the previous company reaching over 100 in just a few days. Even when I answered the phone thinking that I had completed the necessary documents for my resignation, I was simply told to come quickly because they would rehire me from above. We had had enough. Frustrated, Dina and I decided to go to the previous company and give them a piece of our minds. Upon seeing us, the managing director said, "Ah, you finally came back. You should have returned obediently from the start." We hadn't returned to the company. We were there to confront him. I said with a smile, "You should have no problems if Frances is handling the accounting, right? I taught her everything. If she can't do it, that's on her. You, as both a parent and a boss, are failing if you haven't even noticed her poor behavior." The managing director's face turned red with anger. "How dare you! I even offered to rehire you." I calmly responded, "That's precisely why we don't want to be rehired. In fact, we were considering quitting anyway." He looked utterly shocked. "What?" I went on. "Has Frances started acting like a responsible adult yet? While I don't deny nepotism, at least have her work properly. The way she talks, the attitude when she listens, everything about her is unprofessional. Shouldn't you, as her parent, be the one to address these issues? And you fire us just because we pointed that out? It doesn't make sense." To be honest, I couldn't care less about being fired. It was clear things would go south if Frances was the only one left in accounting. The managing director glared at me. "Plus, firing Dina, who's a stellar salesperson, shows you really don't know what you're doing. No wonder you're losing clients. How many have you lost in the last month?" I say with a grin, and the managing director's face turns beet red. "I came here today to talk about our wrongful termination. We need you to provide the necessary documents. Also, I wanted to see firsthand how much trouble you're in without us." Dina chimes in after me. "I've already consulted a lawyer about the wrongful termination. We're willing to consider a settlement if it spares us all the hassle. What will it be?" The managing director bursts out. "What wrongful termination?" I was fired on the spot for bringing up issues with an employee's behavior. This is clearly wrongful termination, I say assertively, locking eyes with the visibly pale president. "President, this is your company, isn't it? Your relationship with the managing director has nothing to do with us. Getting more than 100 phone calls is crazy, don't you think? You fire us, and now you want us back because you're in a jam? Who do you think would even listen to that?" The president only manages to look paler, unable to say a word. "Mr. President, you've done accounting work before, right? I trust you'll handle the rest." Dina and I decide there's no point in further discussion and turn to leave. "We'll leave the rest to our lawyer." With that, we leave the company. After some time, we received a request for a settlement through a lawyer, and we agreed. We were recognized as victims of wrongful termination, and we got our unpaid wages, severance pay, and a settlement amount higher than the market rate. We were pleased. It felt like we had finally had our revenge on the company. Both Dina and I would sometimes get urgent calls from clients while we were out, as we had given them our personal numbers. After we abruptly left, some even called to check up on us. I told them the situation and that we had been wrongfully terminated. Word spread quickly in our tight-knit industry. Most of Dina's clients left once she quit, probably cutting the company's business in half. According to a former colleague, staff kept leaving the company. They were getting complaints from clients, and the president and managing director were overwhelmed trying to keep things running. Frances couldn't manage, so the wife of the former accounting president had to step in. She's a very stern person, and Frances was having a hard time, crying every day. 6 months later, the company apparently went bankrupt. It might be a good thing they lasted half a year. One day I saw someone who looked like the managing director at a supermarket near the station. I couldn't help but stare. There he was, dressed in the supermarket's uniform, getting yelled at by a young man who seemed to be the store manager. Looks like he's working part-time at the supermarket because he couldn't find another job. I couldn't help but laugh at the irony of the once haughty managing director getting scolded by someone younger. Our eyes met from a distance, and I gave him a nod, which he, of course, ignored. But I frequent that supermarket, so every time I go, I look for the managing director, who's usually getting yelled at for something. I thought he was competent, but later learned from Dina that he just took credit for his subordinate's work. By the way, when I told Dina about the supermarket, she started going there out of curiosity and became a regular customer. In a way, the managing director is contributing to the supermarket's revenue, so maybe he's competent after all. But he's always getting yelled at. Dina and I continue to work happily at Scott's company. Scott even said he's relieved because our work has increased the company's sales. We're both looking forward to Scott treating us to dinner for our upcoming birthdays.